Welcome back to the Manhattan Project. This is day 6.
We saw The Hitman's Bodyguard. Why don't you check out our trip?
I thought that was a gun.
It was a gun.
Oh, cool.
Alright, check out our trip to the theater.
A lot of familiar faces today, Evan.
Like my own, so close.
And also, and the Regal Union, which we were here for like lots of movies, right?
And we're back again.
What are you saying?
I'm saying I'm excited to see The Hitman's Bodyguard.
Are you actually, though? Or are you kind of just like thinking it's going to be okay?
No, I'm kind of excited actually. I think it'll pick me up in the form of butt-kicking action.
Hitman's Bodyguard is a new action comedy starring Sam Jackson as a hitman and Ryan Reynolds as a bodyguard trying to protect that hitman so that he can make his way to court to testify against a war criminal played by the always over-the-top Gary Oldman. Hijinks ensue as they bicker their way through the action. Take a look at the trailer.
My job is to keep you out of harm's way.
So John, what were your expectations going into this movie?
The trailer, the red band trailer, made me laugh a couple times, but the whole thing kind of reeked of stunt casting. I didn't feel that there was going to be much originality going on. Like I said, I was surprised that the trailer actually did make me laugh, but overall I was still kind of dreading going into this movie because it's a late summer action comedy starring two actors that, while are great when they're on their game, have been known to star in really shitty movies for a paycheck, especially Sam Jackson. He is one of the greatest actors of his generation, but his name does not mean quality when he goes attached to a movie at all anymore. So yeah, going into this thing, my expectations were mildly low, kind of cautiously optimistic at best.
Here's my take. The Hitman's Bodyguard is a decent action movie that in fact works better as a buddy comedy, especially when it chooses to go more absurd than just realistic or predictable.
I agree pretty much. I just want to say right off the bat with this review, I'm going to nitpick, but it's a good movie. It works. It delivers exactly what the poster and the trailer promised it was going to deliver. If you thought seeing an R-rated comedy that's got big explosions and a lot of gore and laughs with Sam Jackson and Ryan Reynolds yelling at each other the whole time, you get the fuck out of that. You know, like you totally get that as advertised. And I have to give it props for that. Also, pacing's pretty damn good. The movie just flows. So yeah, overall, pleasantly surprised. I agree with your statement that sometimes the action isn't the best part of this movie. The laughs definitely come on more consistent and strong than the action. Some of the action direction is downright bad, especially in the first half of the film. And yet, it doesn't really matter because the movie moves quick enough for you to never really mind. And the audience we saw it with definitely dug the hell out of it.
What did you think about the movie's sort of completely separate side preoccupation with love? There's the whole, I don't necessarily want to call it subplot, but there's an idea that the hitman and the bodyguard are like a flip side of the same coin. They lead similar lives but have different philosophies, so they're going to learn from each other. And for whatever reason, rather than just learning about killing people, they're going to learn how to like romance, not necessarily romance women, but like properly love a woman from each other. Were you surprised by that? Did you appreciate it? Was it fine?
For me, it's just another one of the many elements of this film that is very by the book, very genre tropey. And yet, once again, I think the execution is good enough that I don't mind it being genre tropey. For example, Salma Hayek plays Sam Jackson's wife, who's imprisoned at the time during the movie, and there's a bunch of running gags with her just being very loud and aggressive, and everyone fears her despite the fact that she's this kind of short Latina woman. But it's performed really well. Salma Hayek is an excellent comedic performer. And she's one of my favorite parts of this movie. And so I don't mind the fact that I'm seeing this classic, cliche subversion of expectation jokes where it's like, every time we see her, the joke is simply that she's being aggressive and big, strong men fear her. But shit's funny. And then we have the girl that plays fucking Elektra on Daredevil, playing Ryan Reynolds' love interest. And, it's a pretty thinly written, by the book, sort of like, we're not sexist because she's a strong female character because she's part of Interpol. But again, it's performed well enough. She has some decent action sequences that I don't mind it. It's a movie where I think just overall, the fact that it's so interracial and it's performed by four, pretty damn charismatic actors was enough to make me not mind that the observations it's making about love and the contrasting differences between Sam Jackson and Ryan Reynolds' characters, like sort of philosophically about life. One is all by the book. He has a plan. One of them just runs with stuff. I don't mind that shit is about as basic as you could ask for, and it's everything we've ever seen in a buddy cop movie ever,
Yeah.
Like that's the name of the narrative for this movie. Maybe that's a bad review. Maybe it's lame for us to say that, or for me. But there are so many things I could bring up about why this movie is lazy, is not new, is not subversive, does not add anything to the genre that it's in, and that's all true. But for every single one of those flaws that I bring up, I can't help but admit that they don't actually deter me from my enjoyment of the movie, and they certainly didn't for the audience. So that's why I got to roll with this recommendation. I'm sure it helps that we watched Home Again earlier today, which is like the whitest, most one-race movie of all time. And at least this movie has some fucking color in it, you know?
It's also interesting. This movie, in many ways, to me, felt similar to the movie From Paris with Love.
John Travolta.
John Travolta, and so the other half of a hitman team in Pulp Fiction. And then instead of Ryan Reynolds, it's Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, another like tall, pretty white guy actor. And the difference there, I don't think Luc Besson didn't direct the movie, like produce it or something. But that's another movie where it's sort of like a mid-level, budget-wise action movie where they go around Europe and kill a lot of generic European bad guys, and the hitman character curses a lot and has kind of a dark sense of humor. And I think this movie was a little bit better than that one. Although what this movie probably needed was someone like Luc Besson to handle the action. I know we did mention before the action's not that great. And that is, I think, the main difference for me keeping this movie from being like, oh yeah, if you like action movies or like R-rated comedies, you'll probably like it. Versus like, hey, there's actually like a really solid movie to help close out the summer. Is just like a smidge better on the action. Otherwise, it's like in a couple of years, it will be really hard to remember if certain moments happened in From Paris with Love or The Hitman's Bodyguard.
I mean, I'll admit that I think the action written in the script is probably better than the direction here, because there are some set pieces and some progressions of where the characters get and what they have to do that are silly and over the top, but at least very fun and inventively written. There's a nice, darkly comedic brutality to this movie with the violence, where there's a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, how are they going to get out of this situation? And the way they do it is the most violent way, which I always think is kind of funny in a movie. Like, there's a lot of times where you'll see stuff like this where you're like, why don't they just blank? And a lot of times this movie, they just do blank, even if it's a really brutal thing, if that makes any sense. And so I appreciated that too.
No, that's a good point, especially with us having seen Wind River recently, which is like a heavy and moralistic movie that has some violence in it. I kind of understand the psychology better of this type of action movie. Also seeing Wolf Warriors 2, which has a lot of violence but tries to make you feel things, and that can be very confusing. A movie like this that's just like, now we're going to kill people, don't worry, you're not going to have to feel bad about it for a second, because it's usually going to be a source of humor or whatever else. This is basically Looney Tunes for adults. It sort of renewed my faith in that there can be action movies and also can be serious dramas, and like the depiction of violence can be varied across films. And that's okay.
Very ragdoll.
Yes, very ragdoll.
Anyway, Hitman's Bodyguard gets my recommendation. Definitely go check it out if it's an August afternoon and you need some air-conditioned fun times at the theater. Like I said, if you saw the trailer and you thought it might be pretty good, you're right. It's what you expect. And I definitely expect a sequel to be coming out from this franchise, because it's going to do well. How could it not? It delivers what it promises, like I said.
So like a 2.5 or 3 to 4, depending on your mood?
No, that's not how this works, Evan. I always say what I think of the movie, and then you do your weird metaphor, and then I ask you your thing.
I don't think of a weird metaphor yet.
Anyway, this has been The Manhattan Project. We review movies every single day for you guys, so tune in tomorrow when we'll do another review, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then the